At 78, Emmylou Harris finally chose to speak about her connection with John Denver, a figure whose own music helped define an era of American songwriting. For decades, Harris has remained a towering influence in country, folk, and Americana music. But her story is not only about her own artistry, it is also about the people whose paths intertwined with hers, shaping her direction and inspiring her heart. Born on April 2, 1947, in Birmingham, Alabama, Emmylou Harris was destined for a life of music, even if she did not realize it right away. She grew up in a disciplined military household, with her father serving as a Marine Corps officer who had endured the unthinkable hardship of being held as a prisoner of war during the Korean conflict. From that foundation, Harris inherited both resilience and strength, qualities that would echo throughout her music and give her the emotional power to carry stories of loss, longing, and redemption. Though she excelled in school, demonstrating sharp intelligence and an artistic bent, her path to music was not immediate. For a time, her life seemed set toward the stage in a different way, through drama and acting. She enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where she pursued theater, pouring herself into scripts and stage work. Yet while she studied lines and played roles, another form of storytelling began tugging at her soul. The 1960s were alive with the folk revival, and the voices of Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, and Pete Seeger resonated deeply with her. Their ability to blend poetry with melody, truth with artistry, struck her as something more honest than anything she could find under stage lights. Slowly, she began to set aside drama in favor of music, picking up her guitar more often and letting her voice lead her toward a future she had not yet fully imagined. That decision would change everything. By the late 1960s, Harris left behind the stability of her college studies to chase the uncertain path of a folk musician. She moved to New York City, at the very heart of the American folk revival, where young artists filled Greenwich Village coffee houses night after night, spilling songs of love, protest, and discovery into the smoke-filled rooms. For Harris, the transition was not easy. She performed for modest crowds, sometimes struggling to be heard over the hum of conversation. Money was scarce, and she supported herself with odd jobs, taking on whatever work would help her pay rent while still giving her time to sing. Her personal life also carried its share of challenges. She married young, a relationship that did not last, and she soon found herself balancing the responsibilities of motherhood with the fragile dream of a musical career. Yet in those lean years, she sharpened her artistry. Her voice, crystalline and emotional, began to stand out even in crowded clubs. In 1969, she released her first album, Gliding Bird, a record that hinted at her immense potential but fell short of making a widespread impact. Though the album did not give her the breakthrough she needed, it showed her that the path she had chosen was worth pursuing. She had the raw talent, but she still needed the right mentor, the right moment, to turn that promise into something lasting. That moment arrived in the early 1970s, when she met Graham Parsons, one of the most visionary and restless spirits in American music at the time. Parsons, who had already played with the Byrds and helped form the Flying Burrito Brothers, was searching for a voice that could bring his country rock experiments to life. When he heard Harris sing, he knew instantly that he had found what he was looking for. Their partnership, though brief, was transformative. Parsons invited Harris to sing harmony with him, and together they created something magical. In 1973, they recorded GP, followed the next year by Grievous Angel. These albums would later be seen as milestones in the birth of country rock, blending the traditional sounds of country with the raw edge of rock and the soulfulness of folk. Harris's harmonies didn't just complement Parsons, they elevated him, giving his songs a haunting, ethereal quality that listeners could not forget. For Harris, it was more than a professional collaboration. It was a meeting of artistic souls. She later described Parsons as her musical soulmate, someone who opened her eyes to the depth and beauty of country music's traditions. Tragically, just as their work was beginning to redefine a genre, Parsons' life was cut short by a drug overdose in 1973. His death devastated Harris, leaving her to grieve the loss of a friend and mentor. But even in the grief, she found a mission to carry his vision forward and ensure that his legacy lived on. After Graham Parsons' passing, Emmylou Harris stood at a crossroads. She had lost not only a collaborator, but a guiding force who had helped her see the heart of country music in a new way. Yet rather than letting grief silence her, she transformed it into purpose. Determined to honor Parsons' spirit, she threw herself into her own music with renewed dedication. Soon after, she signed with Reprise Records and in 1975 released the album that would change her life, Pieces of the Sky. From its opening notes, the record revealed the depth of her artistry. It was not a straightforward country album, nor was it strictly folk. Instead, it was something unique, a tapestry that blended traditional ballads, contemporary covers, and her own distinctive style. The record announced to the world that Emmylou Harris was not only a gifted harmony singer but also a force in her own right, capable of carrying songs with both power and vulnerability. One of the standout tracks was If I Could Only Win Your Love, a song that showcased her ability to take another's words and make them entirely her own. The way she delivered the melody, clear, emotional, filled with longing, pulled listeners in immediately. Critics praised her interpretive gift, while audiences quickly recognized that her voice could turn even the simplest lyric into something profound. The success of Pieces of the Sky brought her national attention and positioned her as one of the most important new voices in American music. And she didn't let the moment slip away. That same year, she followed up with Elite Hotel, another critically acclaimed album that further established her reputation as an artist who could bridge gaps between genres. With each new release, she proved that she was not interested in staying within narrow lines. She embraced country traditions while simultaneously expanding them, pulling in rock, folk, and pop influences to create something fresh. By the late 1970s, Harris had entered a golden period of creativity and recognition. Albums like Luxury Liner in 1977 and Quarter Moon in a 10-Cent Town in 1978 pushed her further into the spotlight. These works cemented her reputation as both a fearless interpreter of songs and an artist unafraid to take risks. Luxury Liner, in particular, demonstrated her willingness to reach beyond the expected boundaries of country music, incorporating elements that appealed to rock audiences while still staying rooted in her Southern musical heritage. What made her so remarkable during this period was her versatility. One moment she could breathe life into a centuries-old traditional ballad, and the next she could reimagine a rock or folk tune with such authenticity that it felt like it had always belonged in her repertoire. But Harris's success was not only about the songs she recorded, it was also about the musicians she surrounded herself with. Recognizing the importance of collaboration, she formed the Hot Band, a group of exceptionally talented players who became legendary in their own right. The lineup included Rodney Crowell, a gifted songwriter and performer who would later achieve solo stardom, and Albert Lee, a guitarist of such virtuosity that his playing seemed to defy the limits of the instrument. Together, Harris and the Hot Band created a sound that was both polished and adventurous, a perfect balance of tradition and innovation. Their live performances showcased not only Harris's soaring vocals, but also the instrumental brilliance of the band, making them one of the most exciting acts of the decade. As her career gained momentum, Harris also began to forge meaningful creative partnerships beyond her band. Her ability to blend her voice with others became a hallmark of her artistry, and she soon found herself collaborating with some of the biggest names in music. Perhaps the most celebrated of these collaborations was her work with Dolly Parton and Linda Ronstadt. The three women, each a star in her own right, came together in the 1980s to record as a trio. Their harmonies were nothing short of magical, weaving together three distinct voices into a seamless whole. The project not only showcased the beauty of their collective sound, but also highlighted the power of female collaboration in a male-dominated industry. Together, they created some of the most unforgettable harmonies in country music history, leaving behind recordings that are still celebrated today as some of the finest examples of vocal artistry. At the same time, Harris was sought after by legends who recognized her gift for bringing depth and honesty to any song. She worked alongside Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Neil Young, and Bob Dylan, lending her voice to projects that spanned genres and generations. Each collaboration added another layer to her career, proving that her music could not be confined to one category. Younger artists, too, were drawn to her. By this point, Emmylou Harris had become more than a singer. She was a bridge between worlds. She connected the old and the new, the traditional and the experimental, the past and the future. And through it all, she never lost the emotional honesty that made her music resonate so deeply with listeners. One of the most defining qualities of Emmylou Harris's career has always been her ability to tap into the deepest layers of human emotion. While many singers chase trends or polish their sound to fit a commercial mold, Harris leaned in the opposite direction, toward vulnerability, honesty, and the willingness to lay bare her soul. Her songs consistently explored the great themes of life: love found and lost, the aching pull of memory, the search for redemption, and the resilience that comes from weathering hardship. In her voice, there was always a fragility, but it was the kind of fragility that reveals strength rather than weakness. Audiences connected with her because she sounded like someone who had lived through every note she sang. When she delivered a ballad about heartbreak, it felt genuine. When she sang about faith and longing, it carried the weight of conviction. That authenticity is what set her apart, ensuring that her music never felt manufactured, only lived. As the years passed, Harris demonstrated an uncommon ability to evolve without ever losing her core identity. Many artists who emerged in the 1970s struggled to maintain relevance when the sound of music shifted in the 1980s and 1990s. Yet Harris never faded into the background. Instead, she embraced change as an opportunity for growth. She didn't fear reinvention. She welcomed it. This was evident in 1995, when she released one of the most daring and groundbreaking albums of her career, Wrecking Ball. Produced by Daniel Lanois, known for his atmospheric work with artists like U2 and Peter Gabriel, the album pushed Harris far beyond the familiar terrain of country and folk. The sound was lush, layered, and haunting, filled with ethereal textures that seemed almost otherworldly. Yet, at the center of it all was Harris's unmistakable voice, anchoring the music with emotional gravity. Wrecking Ball marked a turning point not only in her career, but also in how audiences perceived her. It introduced her to an entirely new generation of listeners, many of whom were more aligned with alternative and indie music than traditional country. Songs like Where Will I Be and the title track Wrecking Ball revealed a Harris unafraid of risk, unafraid of stepping into unfamiliar territory. Critics hailed the album as a masterpiece, praising its boldness and its ability to blend genres seamlessly. For Harris, it was proof that artistic relevance is not about clinging to the past, but about having the courage to move forward, even when the outcome is uncertain. What made Wrecking Ball so significant was that it didn't feel like an artist trying to reinvent herself for the sake of survival. It felt like a natural evolution. The emotional honesty that had always defined Harris's music remained intact, even as the sonic landscape around her shifted dramatically. This willingness to grow without losing her essence became the hallmark of her later career. She continued to explore new directions in subsequent albums, sometimes returning to her roots, sometimes venturing into new stylistic experiments, but always with the same sincerity. Each record was another chapter in a lifelong exploration of what music could mean, both for the artist and for the listener. Her ability to evolve also reflected a deeper truth about her personality. Emmylou Harris has never been interested in standing still. Whether through her collaborations with younger artists, her willingness to reinterpret classics in new ways, or her openness to entirely different production styles, she has continually challenged herself. This restless creativity is one of the reasons she has remained relevant across 5 decades of recording. Where others might fade into nostalgia, Harris has continued to push forward. Her work reminding audiences that music is a living, breathing thing, always capable of transformation. Emmylou Harris is not just a musician. She is a storyteller, a bridge between generations, a guardian of traditions, and a seeker of new horizons. Her connection to John Denver is one thread in a much larger tapestry, one that reminds us that the greatest artists are those who understand that their gift is not only for themselves, but for the world. And as her songs continue to echo across time, it is clear that her voice, her spirit, and her legacy will never be forgotten.